Hi, and welcome to this week's Midweek message for the 4th of October. My name is Jules Smith and I'm training to be a priest at Queen's Ecumenical College in Birmingham, and I'm also a member of the St Anne's Church family. It's great to be here and to look at the next piece of scripture in our series, Just Jesus, Just John. There are 4 Gospels in the New Testament, and it is thought that Mark was probably the one that wrote the first one, and that was the one that came before all the others. But why John? We believe that John was a close disciple of Jesus, and he had a more intimate relationship with Jesus than perhaps some of the other disciples. So there's so much that we can gain from reading and reflecting and meditating on the words of John's Gospel. He was a close friend of Jesus and had interesting conversations, and perhaps was a bit more of an insider. There is much we can learn. In the past messages, we've heard about Jesus' baptism in the River Jordan by John the Baptist, and of course we've also heard about his challenges in the wilderness after he was baptised. And then of course he then began his ministry by choosing his 12. So in this week's message we're going to be reading John chapter 2 verses 1 to 12, the wedding at Cana. On the 3rd day there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what concern is that to me and to you? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now standing there were 6 stone water jars for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to them, "Fill the jars with water," and they filled them up to the brim. He said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the person in charge of the banquet." So they took it. When the person in charge tasted the water that had become wine and did not know where it came from, although the servants who had drawn the water knew, that person called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and then the inferior wine after the guests have become drunk. But you have kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this, the first of his signs in Cana of Galilee, and revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. After this, he went down to Capernaum with his mother, his brothers and his disciples, and they remained there for a few days. Wow. Let us spend a few moments now thinking and reflecting on what that might mean. If you don't know, Cana is a Galilean town about 5 miles northwest of Nazareth, and at the time it had a population of around 8,500, which included Christians of course and other faith. The wedding at Cana is a Bible reading that tells us about the first miracle of Jesus, the water into wine. There are so many symbolic meanings in this reading, and perhaps you may explore some of those as you talk together. But let us focus on a few. First, the stone water jars. We know that from the Bible, the function of these jars was initially for the Jewish ceremonial washing. So it meant for washing your hands and your feet, and it was not for drinking. That's interesting. Why did Jesus choose to use that water? From this chapter, we know that Jesus was at the wedding, and he asked the servants to fill up the water jars, which of course he then turned into wine. That would have brought great joy to the person who was leading the wedding, and as we heard at the end of the scripture reading, he questioned the bridegroom and said, we usually use the terrible wine at the end and the good wine at the beginning. But actually in this story, John tells us that was the other way around. Perhaps you can think about why that might be. Why did Jesus do that? I think this process that he took also came, he also tells us that he also came to reveal his glory and of course to fulfill the Old Testament in this new covenant, especially as it happened at a wedding banquet. In the reading, Jesus said, "My hour has not yet come." Another wedding is coming, of course, which we now know is about Jesus being on the cross, and that the real glory is the sacrifice that he gave to us by the spilling of his blood. So there's definitely some sort of symbolism here between the water and the wine, which I think points to the cross. On the other hand, there was another key person in this scripture reading, Jesus' mother Mary. She is the expression of faith. She didn't question Jesus why he wasn't doing it at that moment, but all she told the servants was, "Do whatever he tells you." She showed great faith in her son, even though we hadn't yet seen all of the miracles that he performed through his 2 to 3 years of ministry before dying on the cross. I think if we fully trust God, he will bring us unlimited joy into our life. It's not easy, but in this story, when Jesus told the servants to fill up the jars, they didn't ask, they didn't question, they just did it. And I guess we also think about water in the Bible in different ways. You know, baptism. Jesus was baptised in water and we are baptised in water. It gives us freshness, new life. And actually without water we can't survive. It stops us being thirsty. Our life is like a wedding banquet, and the wedding is a moment to share our joy and love to one another. So perhaps we can fill our jars with water, which will overspill the joy and love to others around us. And of course we can also learn from his mother Mary, when she said, "Do whatever he tells us." So I have a few little questions to just share with you about the story. So Jesus' mother told the servants, "Whatever he," i.e. Jesus, says to you, do it. What does this show us about the relationship that Jesus had with his mother? And think on this, do others that know you well trust you? What things have they asked you to do to show you of this trust? Jesus also said, "My hour has not yet come." What does my hour refer to? What does God want to do through your life? Has your hour come? And then what do you think is John's purpose of relating this miracle to us? Do you find a greater appreciation of Jesus from this sign? This story really made me think. Initially, on the outside, we see a wedding that Jesus was invited to along with his disciples and his mother, and they had a great time, probably. But we also recognise that there's greater, deeper meaning and connections between the Old Testament and, of course, what is yet to come. And Jesus would fully have known, even as he performed that very first miracle at the wedding, that his life would not fulfil a full life in perhaps the way that we will or we do. because his life was cut short for us. I hope that you have lots of interesting conversations around this piece of scripture, and you can deepen your understanding of who Jesus was and how knowing Jesus can help and support our discipleship, our fellowship, and spreading the good news of Jesus. Thank you.